for joining me today. First of all, what difference do you think you could make as Mayor of Greater Manchester?
Well, I think it's absolutely going to be a huge difference. I think that the biggest difference that I'll be making is I won't be arguing with the government. I'll be working alongside with them. I have an absolute firm belief that too much time is being spent with arguing. And we see that from our present mayor, grandstanding. What we need to do is get jobs, deliver results, make sure that we're back on the agenda. And I'm actually perfectly placed to do that.
So what do you think that you personally could bring apart from being Conservative, so therefore being able to work with the government?
Well, no, it's not just about being Conservative. I'm just prepared to work with anybody, not just the government. But the fact is, we've sort of got a closed door on that at this moment in time. People voted for change in Greater Manchester in the last election, and they haven't seen that change happen. And I think what we've really got to do is have somebody who's offering real leadership. One of the biggest problems that we have in the moment in Greater Manchester is policing. This is a massive problem to people. It's been abandoned. It's been left off the agenda. It hasn't been the most important thing on the agenda, and yet people feeling safe on their streets, going to work, coming home from work, going to prayer, whatever, going to their high streets. It's absolutely essential that people feel safe, especially women. And you know, we must be able to know that we can go out on our streets and go to work, and that's missing. So if you want to look at why you would have change, why you need somebody different, it's because of those very reasons. People don't feel safe on their streets. We need to make sure that's rectified. 4 years of HMI reports that have consistently highlighted that we have a problem in Greater Manchester, and nothing's happened. And now we're coming up to an election. We've got sort of 3 chief constables on the go. We've got the previous one who has sort of left, or maybe not left. We don't know in what circumstances. We've got an interim one and a new one coming in. But all of that time, we've had 80-odd thousand unrecorded, 1 in 4 very serious, a lot of them domestic abuse crimes, just not being dealt with. So if there was no other reason to make sure that people were safe in Greater Manchester, that's reason enough. But I will absolutely work cross-party with our MPs, with our councils, to get those much needed jobs and to work with the government. And I think that's a very powerful message.
How would you go about overhauling things with Greater Manchester Police as it is at the minute?
Well, I think there's several areas to look at. One of them is getting the phones answered and sorting out the computer system. That's a much more basic system. So that computer system has not been able to give data or record crimes since 2019, July. So we have no up-to-date statistics of any forms of crime. You can check for yourself on the statistics page. I mean, that's shocking in itself. So we absolutely need to make sure that people can record crime. We know where the crime is happening. We know if we've got hate crime, we know what types of crime. That's one. The next thing is safety. More CCTVs in the areas where we know it's really dark, where there's been hot spots of crime, where it's not well lit when people go to and from work at stations or alleyways. Those are really easy to fix. Those are easy wins for anybody. And we have the money available to do that. We've got grant funding available from the government. And I would want to dip into that immediately. And then the next point is get the confidence back in our police force. They've been battered. Literally, the last mayor is blamed, thrown the last chief constable under the bus, and actually blamed anybody but himself. And yet the blame should stop with him and him alone. So put the confidence back. And then the next thing is go into our schools. We have had incidences before when I was a councillor where if knife crime's happening, we do a very close working relationship with that community to make sure it's understood what's going on, why it's happening, and get to those very difficult crime hotspot areas and make sure we work with that. And then on the other front is get a task force together to make sure that we deal with the grooming issues. We listen to the whistleblowers. I mean, there's a wonderful woman, Maggie Oliver, out there time and time again talking about these issues, and we're not listening. So I think that's going to be an awful lot of the major work that we've got to do is listening, finding out where we have those problems, offer fresh leadership, and delve deep and get it resolved.
You've mentioned hate crimes and things like that. How do you go about addressing certain inequalities across Greater Manchester? Obviously, we've seen the introduction of a race panel and some work on women's safety. What would you do?
Well, I'd enhance that offer, and I'd make sure that where we knew we had feedback, and that's only by being really in the community, isn't it? So where we know we've had feedback of issues, we absolutely address those inequalities. So it's always easier said than done, but we know the statistics where the disparities lie. And so we must focus our time where those are more concerns. As a councillor, I had to do that myself in a particular area of my ward where we had a prevalence of crime. That must be addressed because other areas don't need it as much. But overall, if you want to reduce crime and you want to make people feel safe, then they've got to see a strong body that's leading from the front saying we are not going to accept this. And also somewhere where you can go that is listening to pick up on the ebb and flow of Greater Manchester, to know there's problems over here and there's problems over there. And I don't think any of that's working at this moment in time.
Another key thing in sort of getting rid of inequalities, I guess, is getting people into homes and affordable housing. With all sort of the high rises shooting up across Manchester at the minute, what would be your plans to create affordable housing for people already in Manchester?
Okay, so twofold. One is I want affordable housing for the whole of Greater Manchester. For too long, our mayor is just so city centre focused. And you're right, we've got high rises in city centre Manchester, but we haven't got affordable homes in other areas at all. They're very, very few and far between. My whole focus is to be on developing our town centres and our city centres differently. So we know that post-COVID, there's been a huge amount of issues with our high streets, getting them reignited, getting them working, getting people back into those offices and into those shops. And I don't think, in fairness, they're ever going to be the same again. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think it's a big change, a shift that people, they expect their local shops to perhaps be where they were before or how they were before. And online shopping was always going to be a catalyst for change. And it's been accelerated during COVID. So we need to make sure that we get those high streets working again. So that's leisure, retail, affordable homes, all in that space. And we need to make them green. We need to put in lots and lots more trees, and we need to put in parks. We need to make them so they are attractive because, as you rightly say, I mean, have a look at Piccadilly. It's a shocking state of affairs. I mean, we've got a new park going in with the Mayfield area, the development there, the government money on the brownfield sites. And that's really positive. I'm really, 6.5 acres, a park going back in. But there's so much, we mustn't keep putting in concrete fountains and, people want to see greenery. And so you're going to have to develop a whole new strategy around our brownfield sites. We're going to have to go through the whole brownfield site register to actually make sure we have a proper up-to-date register of where we can develop and build. And then we need to make sure that they're done in a way that people find both attractive and environmentally friendly.
Obviously, the environment is a big focus for a lot of people. What would be your plans? I know you've criticised sort of plans for clean air zones in the city centre. What is that not the law that would have to come in for everyone? What would you do differently?
Okay, so we all need clean air. Let's start with the thing that I have children too, and I absolutely agree with you. But the way you do it is that there's many ways of cooking a meal, and I'm just going to do it differently. And my way of doing this is that a 493 square mile congestion tax around the whole of Greater Manchester is absolutely ludicrous. It will drive business out of Greater Manchester.
Has anybody suggested a tax?
Well, when you come out and you have to pay an additional charge for coming off your drive, I would call that a tax. You can call it whatever you like. You can call it Burnham's charge. You can call it, I think, congestion charge. I don't mind what you call it. But the fact is, if you've got to pay additional money that you didn't have to pay the day before. So let's take an average van driver. So they're going to come off, and this week they can come off their drive. They can drive anywhere in Greater Manchester, and it won't cost them a penny other than their fuel costs, etc., normal running costs. Now they've got to pay an additional £10 a day. When you weigh that up, that's about £3,000 a year. That's for one van, let alone if they've got a window cleaning company doing 3 vans, or if you've got painter and decorators or joiners, plumbers. And this is the whole of Greater Manchester. Now, What you could have done, and what I would do differently, is, because it's all very well challenging, isn't it? It's all very, I'm not doing that. But what is my alternative? And this is my chance to really highlight that. I would have already done it. So I would have already started with electric charging points throughout Greater Manchester. There are more charging points in Wandsworth, which is 13 square miles, than there are in the whole of Greater Manchester. So you can't charge your car easily, and therefore nobody is going to want to quickly move over to a cleaner, greener vehicle. So let's add that up with the idea that we could have bus corridors where we know that there are static traffic, where we know congestion exists, and we drive that out. We incentivise our councils. So we say to the councils, all of the 10 of them, you must lead from the front. I think Bury's just brought a whole raft of bin carts that are diesel. Bury Council, diesel. Now that is not setting an example, but you want everyone else to set the example. The small businesses who have struggled so hard during COVID, you want them to pay the price, and they will then pass that cost, if they can make it through, the taxi drivers and all the others, on to Joe Bloggs Public, who may or may not be able to afford it either. And sometimes it's the most vulnerable who use the taxi drivers who will have to pay even more, and they've already paid enough. So we can set the example with the councils leading from the front. And then if you bring the people on the journey with you, the businesses in Greater Manchester, by saying we've got an award scheme for those businesses that step forward and are clean and green. And we champion that as the mayor. And I say, look, these amazing businesses have already come on board on our journey, and they've moved their vehicles over to this new electric vehicles. So there's a whole strategy of doing things differently. My question is, why didn't he do it already? Why nothing's been done in 4 years, but now we're all going to get slapped with this? And the largest, I believe, in Europe, if not the world, of a congestion tax around the whole of Greater Manchester. And I think that's both unreasonable, unnecessary, and very, very detrimental to. We will become a place that people won't go to open a business because you have to pay that additional money.
Obviously, another part of getting cars or reducing congestion is a focus on public transport. I've seen you mention plans to connect the whole of Greater Manchester. What are your plans?
So you're absolutely right. Some of the interesting plans that have been disappointing is the fact that you can't get your bicycles on the metro line. That would be really handy, just as a side issue, really. But I've got a different strategy around buses. So whether people realise this, when Andy's plan about buying back or franchising the buses, it really only means that he's paying for 10 bus depots, a ticketing machine, and employing, I think, about 57 people to run that. We aren't actually getting any more buses or better bus journeys or interconnectivity or even greener buses. Now, I want to do a capped fare system. I want to work with a partnership model. I want to do a full consultation around that to make sure we're going down the right path. An enhanced partnership, it works very well in the West Midlands, and it won't cost the people of Greater Manchester this money that's already been set aside. So 134.5 million that Andy's talking about for spending on this is just a starting block for spend to buy those bus depots, to actually, and that's going to come from the people of Greater Manchester's council tax. And that's only the starting block. It's going to go on from there and become more and more costly, with forecasts up to 292 million and still not properly costed. I would say to everybody, why don't we go down a partnership model? Public and private people working together, businesses working together hand in hand to deliver a better service than we've got now by far, but by being capped, innovative, greener, cleaner buses, and going to more places. And the government's just set aside 3 billion to do this, and I want to jump on that and make sure we do it that way around. I think that's the right way to do it.
You've obviously been quite critical of Andy Burnham in a lot of regards. Would you say he's done a good job in regards to rough sleeping? And what do you mean by you want to take that further?
Okay, so I think he said that he would eradicate rough sleeping. That was going to be his job. He has failed to do that, so he can't have done a good job, because he didn't do what he said he was going to do any more than he's sorted out the police. But the bit that I think is really, really unnecessary or wrong, is a bit about a bed for a night. It just doesn't go far enough, does it? A bed for a night isn't
I think
enough.
it's a bed every night.
Okay, well, a bed every night. I'm happy to have that one, but that isn't enough for me. So we've got to give hope and opportunity. I've spoken to our prisons. I've spoken to the people that have been rough sleepers, are rough sleepers. There's about 3 different types of people, and you can never generalize, but we've got veterans, we've got people who've had prison experience, and then we've got obviously those that have fallen through the cracks in another way. Each one of those must be dealt with differently. This homogenous glob of talking about people is absolutely appalling. And I would want to do it on a almost like a CV basis where I get to know the person. I want to know what their health is like. I want to know what their teeth are like. I want to know what their feet are like. I want to know what their skill set is. I want to know what I can do to help them get into work. I want to know how their mental health is. And I want to really understand. And I think if we spent more time uploading this, front loading this, you would actually find the back part of this you would eradicate it, and you would really understand what's happening and how you can resolve it, rather than this drip feeding constant commitment of absolutely doing nothing. I don't know if these people are benefiting from regular medical health care. I don't know if they're being fully serviced in every way so that their well-being, and are they just coming in, going back out, coming in, going back? That isn't good enough. And I think we put a task force together. I think I can find many, many groups of people, organisations who'll do this with me, and who will absolutely want to see that change with those people. And I think it will be difficult because they are in, people get into a rut of how they live their life. And we need to make sure that we can try and take them out of the rut and give them hope. Hope is the biggest thing that you can offer. Opportunity, a job, training, retraining, all of these things. And that will be a package that I would absolutely work to deliver for the people.
Obviously, this election has been pushed back a year because of the pandemic. How would you even begin to start sort of building back after what's been a change of life for everyone, both health-wise and jobs-wise?
Well, firstly, you have to recognise it, don't you? I think you have to recognise where we are, line in the sand today of what's happened to both me, you, everybody else. There is nobody that hasn't been affected by this. I can't think of one person that hasn't suffered from this, and in one way or another. And I think the problem with the mayor is he hasn't recognised that. Every single plan is the same plan pre-COVID. You can go through them yourself. Nothing has changed. Now, that is utterly ridiculous, because we are in such a... We know our high streets are suffering. We know that we've got issues with the environment and how important it is. In every chamber in Greater Manchester Council chambers, they're calling a climate emergency. But our mayor, the present mayor, is planning on building all over the green belt. Again, even though we know that we should rethink this and make sure that our high streets and affordable homes, as you've rightly said, are used and maximised to their best capacity. So first you address it. Secondly, you go out to your businesses to say, what do you need from me? And the other thing is you put yourself back on the global stage. Greater Manchester is bigger than buses. It's bigger than the kind of subjects we're talking about here. It needs and it deserves so much more. So it deserves to be a global player. We need to be able to match up with any city. We are, I think, a fantastic city, well placed. Any city in the country, and we need to be addressing that and going out to all the nations, or the world, and say, look, we're open for business. We've got a great airport. We've got great infrastructure. We've got great people. We're really well placed. We're known for our industrial side, and let's get that industrial green revolution happening here. Those jobs here. So I think there's a huge amount you can do around all of that to bring the jobs here. And I don't want just any jobs. I want good jobs. I want them to be able to have all our universities to be able to have people that come out of there and have a plethora of really good opportunities. But you cannot do any of this while our police are in special measures. You cannot do any of this while people don't feel safe on our streets. That must be the pinnacle to get back out of special measures. We're the only police force in the country in special measures. We need to get on top of crime. We need to make sure people feel safe, because then I can go out to business and say, come here, what a brilliant place it is to live, bring up a family, to work, all the things we know. So I want to be an ambassador for those jobs, those opportunities, and that will then drive the levelling up agenda that you're talking about. That will make sure that we see the benefits of working with the government and stop the fighting, and also the benefits of somebody who has such passion and love for our area. I brought the Manchester Marathon to Greater Manchester. A man came up to me and said, he was in a supermarket and he said, Laura, I've got an idea for a marathon in Greater Manchester. And I looked at him quite honestly and I said, with our weather, I'm not quite sure if people are going to flock here. And I can tell you now, he said it will be a flat marathon and it will be fast. And it was a really unique selling point. So I thought, well, this is sounds like a good idea. My husband was a runner, so that kind of motivated me along to think, let's give it a go. And it's absolutely a tremendous marathon. I think it's the largest outside of London, certainly the flattest. I think it's the flattest in Europe. And we're looking to have, hopefully, post-COVID, about 30,000 runners. And that brings positivity, it brings jobs, it brings culture, and it stimulates the economy. The hotels get full, people come and see our wonderful area. And so being innovative is something that I think a mayor should be. And it should be reaching out to say to people, look at what we've got here. How can we max it out and what can we do better? And I would absolutely be doing that.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that you don't think we've covered?
No, I think that's fine. Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Just one final question. What, if you were to be elected as mayor, what would you be most excited about over the next few years?
I'd be absolutely, I'd want to make sure, as I say, our streets are safe, people felt comfortable to go to work, as I say, come home from work. The next thing is jobs, working with our whole plethora of universities and colleges to offer those great jobs. I'm very passionate about apprenticeships. I don't know if you know this, I was born with hearing issues and a speech impediment. And so for me, and I was kind of told that, you're never going to really get anywhere because this is really going to hold you back. But it didn't, and it shouldn't. So hope, opportunity, being on the global stage, delivering those jobs, working with our cultural heritage, making sure that we have really big events, both music, arts, all of those things. I was a student here, and so I used to go to Hacienda, and it was a great venue. We've got such opportunity to really make Greater Manchester shine, and I absolutely intend to do that. Okay, thank you very much.